always funny watching myself in the past rubbing my hands and stuff like that because it's slightly delayed. Hi, prehistoric Matt. How are you today? We're in the middle of a storm right now. It's very gray out there, and every so often the wind and the rain come pouring through, so it's a nice stormy day. It's kind of neat. Hi, Ryder and Pietra. How are you? I had some interesting questions that people wrote in, so I can start off with some of that since we got a couple of people here. Someone wanted to know about the Summerland. Now, the Summerland is something I hear reference to in a lot of places and stuff like that. Walking through botanical gardens. All right. And I'm doing pretty well. So the Summerlands is at this point in time in neo-paganism, paganism, Wicca, and that kind of thing, has become kind of like the place that good spirits go to take a rest. According to Cunningham, this realm is neither heaven nor the underworld. It simply is a non-physical reality, much less dense than ours. And some Wiccan traditions describe it as a land of eternal summer with grassy fields and sweet flowing rivers. Others see it vaguely as a realm of forms where energy swirls, coexist with the greatest energies, the goddess and god, in their celestial identities. So that is the current definition of the Summerland, generally speaking. Hi, Mary. I'm so glad this is your question. Hi, Athusa. So that is the general consensus at the moment of what it is. However, in researching this, I discovered that it meant something completely different before, which I found quite fascinating. It came originally from Theosophy, and if you don't know much about Theosophy, that was Madame Blavatsky and a whole group of people similar to her. They came up with this sort of theory of magic and existence and that kind of thing. And, there's a lot of books about it. You can have fun going down that rabbit hole if you want to. And they also called it the astral plane heaven, not just Summerland. And it's where souls who have been good in their previous lives go between incarnations. So this is where it gets kind of odd. Now that sounds kind of similar to, Cunningham's and, Gardner's version of it. Theosophists believe that the Summerland is maintained by hosts of planetary angels serving Sanat Kumara, the Nordic alien from Venus. Now, this is a phrase I never thought I would run across. A Nordic alien from Venus, who they believe is the governing deity of Earth and leader of the spiritual hierarchy of Earth. He is said to rule from the floating city of Shambhala on the etheric plane, which is between the physical plane and the astral plane, about 5 miles or 8 kilometers above the Gobi Desert. So they're very precise on its location, which we can't see because it's not quite physical. So I thought that was a fascinating little bit of diving down a well when I did not, think of what I might find when I looked for that. So, I think it's like all other views of the afterlife. It's like we each decide to gravitate towards the one that makes the most sense. And the current definition of Summerland is like where people go in between lives to take a break and take a rest. And some of the spirits that are there stay there to help others so that they can process whatever it is they need to process before they come back. So not everybody goes there and comes back. Some people go there and stay. But like we've talked about before, afterlives are like that. It's like a very individualized kind of vision of what things are like. So, living for that color. The prehistoric Matt says Summerland sounds like Six Flags amusement park, only less fried foods. Well, I wouldn't see that as my favorite place to go because I don't like roller coasters, but if that's what you like, then yay, why not? So Magical Mermaid said sounds like Dimensional Guardians. Would the Summerlands be the same place as the Firelands? I don't think so. I think I've not heard of the term Firelands before, so I'm assuming that you're talking about the elementary fire, the place where fire is, where it exists, its kingdom. So probably not. But it's an idealized version of the afterlife, like any other spiritual path or religion has some idea. The Greeks had the Elysian fields for the heroes and so forth in the underworld. Their underworld was all under, but each part had different types of things for the different kinds of humans and beings and stuff like that to be in, depending upon how they acted on Earth. And of course, we know heaven, hell, purgatory. Purgatory is specifically Catholic. I don't think the other Christian religions have purgatory in it. And the Muslims have got their version of heaven. I don't know too much about them except the ones we hear about with the garden and the 72 virgins and whatnot, where they have a paradise that they go to. So, there's no way to say it's real or not real when it comes to that, because of it's a thing we've sort of created in our own minds, and not that many people come back from there. And I believe, with my experience with helping the spirits cross over, that everyone's afterlife is unique and depends upon their beliefs and what they think is going to happen, especially in their subconscious. So you have to really watch out for that subconscious. So, yes, Amanda B., I do. I come on once a week and I answer questions. And people write questions in to have me ask them or answer them. And so that was one of those, was the question about the Summerlands, which we haven't really done a video on. So that was kind of interesting. And then one of the other questions was on doing the drawing down the moon rituals as an individual instead of in a group, because the video I talked about what it's like doing it for a group, not so much just doing it for yourself. And the methods are similar. I mean, the idea is to get yourself into the right frame of mind. So depending on what works for you, whether it's music, lighting, being able to have the moonlight come in the window, being out of doors. I've done a lot of full moon things outside and really enjoyed them. In Santa Cruz, there was a place that we walked through the center of a tree. It was like it had been hit by lightning and the center of the tree was burned out, so it made like a arch over a path. And we used that as going through the veil from normal reality to magical reality. And we had a number of full moon rituals that we would, when it was a nice clear night, we would go up there and walk through this inside of this tree and step out the other side and then go on up the hill and be in the moonlight. So really the best way to get into that kind of excuse me, that kind of energy is going to be outside in nature in the beginning, particularly because that's going to give you the most direct connection with those energies. And the idea is to allow or let that lunar energy bathe you, come down upon you and fill you up, and have a direct contact with, a conversation with the goddess energy from the moon. So yeah, practice. And I love going outside when the moon is full like that, and because that's when I see a lot of nature spirits and fairy folk and whatnot in the moonlight. They're kind of like more visible, and everything looks more magical in the light of the reflected light of the sun instead of the direct light. It sort of softens all of nature a little bit, makes it kind of interesting and special. So, Laura says, happy belated birthday, Siofra. Last Sunday was my best friend's birthday, and I took her out. It has taken me a week to recover. I can't run and rip like I used to. Well, yeah, I get that. Prehistoric Matt says, I was wondering, do entities like fairies, demons, and gods have lifespans? Like, is there entities today that have been around since, like, the time of the dinosaurs, or do they fade away thousands of years? And Teresa says, hi, so glad I made it to the live. Welcome, Teresa. Um, it's a good question, and I don't know. I have met some beings, spirit.
I can pardon that.
Okay.
Is it beings like elemental lifespan? An element capable lifespan. Fairly on what have 5 element and consciousness lifespan.
And in my experience, I've definitely met some beings that have been around since before humans came on the scene. So they've been around, as far as I can tell, since just about the beginning. So I think it's one of those questions that doesn't have a single answer. It's going to depend upon circumstances and that kind of stuff. So there are definitely still some beings out there that have a huge reservoir of energy, and they are there. They just exist, and that may be where some of our myths come from, like dragons and foo lions and things like that, mythical creatures of all kinds that actually exist on a spirit plane or an energetic plane, but not necessarily on a physical plane. So there's that. Behold the pterodactyl god. Yes, I'm sure the pterodactyls were in fear of it. If it was a pterodactyl bigger than them, that would be something else. So, some of the other questions I had that came in, someone had some questions about the amethyst crystal project that we do on the full moon, that I do and some other people are participating in, and had some detailed questions on how does it work and what do you do with your crystals and what's okay, not okay, kind of thing. So one of the questions was, she wanted to know if she should bury the ones that she has already connected to the battery crystal on her property where she lives, and then dig them up every month to recharge them. And the short answer is, don't dig them up once you bury them, because the point of burying them in this case is to connect them to the other amethyst crystals that are already in the ground and help spread the energy around the world. And before you bury them, you connect them to a larger amethyst battery crystal that you don't bury. You keep that on your altar. And that's the one that you charge up every month. And as you charge up that crystal, the connection it has with the smaller crystals that you've connected it to are charged in the ground or hanging in your car or sitting in your purse or sitting on your altar, wherever they happen to be, and it connects to those. And so what we're creating is like a central form to charge them up every month in order to energize them and think about them. And the more people that participate in that, the stronger the web becomes. So you can do, whatever you want with the individual ones, and you don't have to try and find them. That would be way difficult to dig them up every month. So then the follow-up questions, if I don't want to bury them, what about placing them in the corners of my home? Wherever you want to put them is fine. I have one hanging from my car mirror, and it helps me when I'm driving. If I start to feel stressed and people are doing strange things on the road and not acting right, then I sort of focus on that amethyst crystal and kind of spread the joy, peace, and tranquility which is the energy that we've energized it with to help me and then help other drivers that might be near me. So everybody stays calm. So, but I've buried some in parks, and that's one of the things that we did was the idea was to charge them up and then bury them in places where people might need to have that energy, like at a courthouse or in a park or something like that, just to sort of assist passively and make that energy more accessible and more available for people. So then the next question on that was, should I leave them exposed to the air, or is it okay to put them in little boxes? I see no reason why you can't put them in a box or expose them to the air. I don't think it matters one way or the other. And then if boxes are okay, what materials will make it easiest for the battery to energetically reach these satellite crystals? So the only thing that I know of that will definitely block the energy would be silk, so you don't want to wrap them in silk in a box, or if there is such a thing as a silk box, or you don't want to put it in there because that'll block the energy from radiating, and the point of these crystals is to radiate energy out. That's kind of the whole notion of it. But when I was the one thing I can use a pendulum for is to be able to tell if energy is getting through something. And when I had that experience in Big Sur, and I was supposed to find the knife and block the knife and all this other stuff, I did experiments with different fabrics to try and find something that would completely block the energy of the knife that I was connecting to the dangerous object I was supposed to deal with. And a polyester fabric definitely did the best job at completely blocking all energy because the pendulum wouldn't move at all. So I can trust it for that. I can't trust it for answers, but I can trust it for that. So if you're worried about whether or not the energy might get blocked, try putting it in the box and using a pendulum, and if the pendulum moves, then it's not blocking the energy. I guess that would be one way of saying that. So that would be that answer. And then another crystal question: do rocks, crystals, and stones have an over-spirit or diva that one could respectfully approach in meditation to learn more about their nature? And you guys can let me know if you've had some experiences with that. I'm thinking that yes, it's true that there is such a thing. I'm not sure how easy it is to connect with. It's easier for me to connect with things that are alive. I connect with stones fairly often, but like out in nature, one of the things a nice big boulder will do for me is to slow my mind down. It'll be a way to create silence in my head pretty quickly. And that's because I'm trying to tune into its vibration and its thoughts, because they do think, but very slowly. And that real slow movement of their energy slows me down when I tune into it. So that's something to experiment with. And I'm pretty sure some people are going to be better at that than others. So Teresa says, hi, I've just recently put up my Persephone altar. Now when I sit at the altar, I get a whirlwind of energy around me. It's hard to explain, but is this Persephone or me sinking into meditation? Well, it's probably a combination of both of those things, I would think. Because it's you're creating an atmosphere, and it's tuning your body to the atmosphere, tuning your energy to the atmosphere, so that then other things can happen. So keep doing it and see what happens next. So Jacqueline says, the rocks themselves will speak to you. Yes. They will speak to me sometimes. It depends. I had them warn me about things that were ahead. But again, it's not words. It's not like a conversation with a rock. I did have some of the crystals that I work with, or stones that I work with, next to my bed at night show themselves to me. I actually saw my first crystal being which was my piece of kyanite, raw kyanite that I have. And it was just very there. It didn't say anything in particular, but showed itself to me. So then I know which way is up, because it was in the shape of the crystal, and there was a face at one end that, this is the top of this crystal. And so, communicating with something that doesn't think the same way that we do is not simple necessarily, and certainly can be misunderstood, I'm sure, by any of us as far as what we get. But yeah, trees are more talkative as far as communicating what's going on in the neighborhood, if there's something happening nearby that I need to know about. And so that's sort of hard to explain, but it is. Thank you. I appreciate it. For my hair color. Midnight says, Mary says, wow, divine timing that I was able to take a break right when you were answering my questions. I got to get back to work. Okay. Have a good day at work. Midnight says, it's great to catch you live. I hope you're well. Yes, I am. Crystal says, hello, how do I cleanse and recharge my rose quartz and other stones? Well, that depends on what you're doing with them. I don't cleanse and recharge my crystals. I talk to them and charge them up for purposes and what to do. But if I'm working with them, I don't want to start from scratch and give them a bath and get rid of all the energy I've put in and then start over. So it depends on what you're using them for. If you're using them for getting rid of negative energy and you aren't confident that you can make a grounding cord from the stone to naturally drain it, the negative energy, as you're working with it, so it does it automatically, then cleansing it's a good idea. And you can do that depending on the stone. Some stones, water's not a good thing to use for them because they are somewhat dissolvable in water. Some, you'll have to get to know the stones that you're working with and what's best. Some people use sound to cleanse their crystals, or tune them, as they say. Some people use sage. Some people bury them in the ground. Some people recharge them in the moonlight or the sunlight. And again, you got to know your crystal, because if the energy that you're trying to charge them with isn't compatible with the crystal itself, it's not going to do you much good. And you're just sort of fighting against its nature. So getting to know the energy and what is good and not good for that crystal and what its attributes are supposed to be is always a good idea. Okay, now I'm going to have to go up a little bit because I've seen some questions go by. All right, so Ryder says, was wondering, is there a specific time that's better to do ghost proofing, like on the full moon, for example, or is it good to do any time? My opinion, if it's needed, any time will do. It doesn't matter, because the ritual itself, you might be able to get a little extra external energy to do the ritual from an astrological or astronomical event. But you start with a banishing, so that would be new moon. You're finishing, then you go to a cleansing, then you go to a sealing, which could be more full moon. So I don't think so. I think that if you feel that you need to do it, you just do it. And I've never worried about what time of the month it is or what's going on in, the local area even. Just this person is being harassed by a ghost and can't sleep, then we're going to fix the problem and then we're going to seal everybody in. Yes, Jacqueline is correct. It's not words, but it elicits a response. Does it literally look like a humanoid made of sharp crystals? The one I saw, yeah, it actually had lines. It didn't have arms. It just had, a lot of times when I first go to bed, I see colors and sometimes I smell things. This was a night, started off with a lot of colors in my head. We're talking vivid, bright colors. It's just fantastic. I really enjoy it a lot. And I was getting this like color light show and movement of color and everything. And then all of a sudden there was this thing that didn't shift. It didn't move. It was like stable. and unchanging. And because of that, I noticed it. And then I noticed that it had these like planes. The raw crystal I have has got a lot of these little planes through it, where it's been broken, I guess, the way they dig it out, I suppose. And it was there next to my bed. And it was I guess, about 3 feet tall because the top part of it was above my bed. And so I looked at it and I'm like, okay, this isn't the color stuff. What is this? And the planes of the shape and everything. And I suddenly realized it was the crystal I had under my pillow. I think I had been working with it for a while because it was the shape of the actual crystal I had. So it was the being of that crystal. I don't know that, it connected to all beings of like all of that kind of crystal or not, but it was definitely that distinct crystal. And yeah, it was pretty interesting. I'm just like, okay, that's that. There it is. It didn't tell me anything. It just showed me where its head was. And I'm like, okay then. So let's see. Crystal Austin says, I use them for healing of negative energy. Sorry, I'm just starting as Wiccan. I'm very new to this. Yeah, well, Wiccans have got different views on the subject, I'm sure, as well. Linda says, hello, Siofra and everyone from Chicago. Amar says, if it's no trouble, Teresa Rose asked a question about a sensation she experiences at her altar. Yes, and I talked about that. And I believe that it's tuning into the energy of the altar that she's prepared. Because certainly we have that with our altars in our temple. I mean, we walk into our temple and there's an energy that's here that changes our energy. And if you're not used to having your energy changed all the time, it can be kind of spacey making, dizzying, I guess. You once mentioned that the Five of Pentacles came to you and told you what it meant. I'm curious as to what it said. Okay. I'm not remembering the card specifically. I had an entire deck do that to me. One card at a time, one card a night. But I think what you're referring to is that I draw the pentagram every night, generally speaking. And in drawing it, I started to understand what it meant. I connected to why you do the movements in the direction that you do them and what's going on in the pentagram, if that's what you're talking about. So you'll have to clarify. Could be something I said and don't remember. That happens. Crystal says, I use amethyst in the rose quartz. Laura says, hi, Linda. Linda says, hi, Laura. Hey, guys, you just are talking to each other. That's fine. Okay, so Jacqueline says, you've mentioned in a few of your videos about sky gazing. Can you go into more detail about how you do that and how long it may take to achieve sight of the spirits that are present? Well, how long it will take, I don't know. It's going to depend upon what blockages you might have in your subconscious. Because the idea of seeing something is often kind of startling and scary for people. And doing it during the day makes it easier for me, I know, because I'd rather see things with lights around so I see other stuff and then I don't engage that part of the brain that's there looking for danger and wanting to respond, like, is this a bad thing? Is something going to happen to me? Kind of thing. And when I was younger, the first time I started to see things in the sky was probably as a teenager, later on as a teenager. I think my father was already gone, and we did a trip. And part of the trip, we were in the Appalachian Mountains, and we took a hike up one of their mountains, which is, short. They're not like the Rockies, they're small. And we were up at the top, overlooking the Shenandoah Valley and the river, that winds through there, because it's been there for so long. It's very meandering. And looking out into the clear blue sky, I saw a pattern, geometric kind of a pattern that sort of morphed, like it would go in and out and like this kind of thing. It was like all these little things around the outside and all the way down into the middle, and would do that. And that's the first time I remember seeing things in the sky. And for a while, every time I looked at the sky, if it was a clear blue sky, I would start to see that, and that would be the only thing I could see. And then when we were staying at the cabin on top of the power spot, I was sitting outside just gazing up at the sky, and I started to see that pattern, and then it changed. And then there were like all, it's sort of like, imagine a sort of a pale, silvery white filament kind of stuff that would suddenly start appearing in the sky. And just before I started to see the white filaments, the sky would look like a gray popcorn kind of thing. And every so often I would like change my sight and look and make sure there really are not clouds in the sky. I'm like, wait a minute. And then no, there were no clouds in the sky, and then let my eyes on focus, see the popcorn stuff, and then start to see these thin lines, moving lines of energy. And then I just let it happen one day. I just thought, okay, it's daytime, I'm here, I'm safe, I'm going to just see what this is. And then all of a sudden these lines started to form these shapes, and I saw the Garuda, I saw a giant Buddha head at one point, just kind of like came up off the horizon. And I mean, there was just so many different things that were going on there. And then as I got used to that idea, I would sit for hours because we were on vacation, and I could just let it happen. And Ian was like doing his meditational practices outside, and sometimes I'd be sitting inside the cabin with, just looking out the door at that part of the sky, and so I didn't get my eyes too tired from the light, and then watch things happen. And then after that, I got the idea that if I could see these big, huge, giant things way up high, maybe I could see smaller things closer. And that's when I started trying to look at trees, bushes, grass, and that kind of stuff, and just focus on that and do the same thing. Let my eyes relax, let my sight sort of shift and change, not be committed to whatever it was that might be there physically, but just to allow shapes and impressions to come forth. And that's when I started seeing the fairies and other nature spirits again. And every so often, like that one time when we left our cat home and came back to it being dead, I saw it when we were camping as clear as a bell. And it's like not in color, it's like an image, a line drawing, a perfect reproduction line drawing of my cat. And I knew it was our cat, and I felt something must be wrong if our cat was there at the campsite, and sure enough there was. So I don't know that there's a specific way of doing it that always gets the same results. I just know what my experience was, or how it happened to me. And part of it is letting go of expectations and trying to set aside the possibility of being afraid of what you might see, because things look different. So, all right, now I have to go back a bit because I have some questions I missed while I was talking. All right, Midnight says, sorry, I meant the Five of Pentacles card from the Tarot. So, yeah, I don't remember. The answer to that is I don't remember. Rosie says, hello, hi. Pietra says, I would like to know, what do you think about sigils, and if you incorporate them in your craft, do you make your own or do you use some pre-established ones? Okay, so my understanding of sigils is taking a phrase, taking out the vowels, looking at the consonants and putting them together in some kind of a picture form to remind you of the phrase. And no, I don't use those. I sometimes use spirit seals, planetary seals, and I get them from different sources. I don't use them all the time. I have a few that I just sort of keep with me that Ian has made for me for health and longevity and that kind of stuff. Doing a lot of research and finding a being that is helpful and that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't really use sigils in my particular practice. Not that type, at any rate. Amar says, thanks for being thorough. I thought a question was inadvertently missed. I apologize for missing that. Well, no, that's fine. I totally appreciate you taking care of each other. I think that's awesome. Jonathan says, hi, Siofra. Glad to catch you live. Yay! I know. Is there a benefit to doing high ceremonial magic instead of lower magic? Well, see, now that's a whole subject in and of itself. What's the difference between high magic and low magic, and is there really a difference? Is that just some, I don't know, way of trying to put people down for doing a different kind of magic than the ceremonial magic or not? It depends on what you need and what your style is. Ceremonial magic is very energy intensive, focus intensive, and that kind of thing, and certainly has a lot of structure. And you don't have to think on your feet as much with the ceremonial magic. And what people think of as low magic or any spells that you do, including healing and that kind of thing. So I try not to separate the high-low because people equate that with good-bad, which it isn't. It's sort of bad wording, I think, that they decided to pick on that. But that could have been leftover patriarchy kind of stuff because the women who were witches were considered doing low magic, and the men who were magicians were considered doing high magic. So I'm thinking there was a class thing going on there, perhaps. I don't know. But it's going to depend upon you and what works for you and what feels right. If it feels right and you're getting results, then that's a good thing to do. And if it doesn't, if it feels artificial, then you need to do something else. So there's no one answer to that. But it's a good question. Hi, Siofra. Raven says, what do you recommend is the best way to work through blocks to spiritual abilities? Thank you, love. Okay. Well, working on yourself, working on your present life, working on your issues that have been, highlighted by whatever it is that has happened to you. Those are the things that help to clear the way for any spiritual abilities because it's becoming more who you are that allows that to flourish. So I don't recommend trying to do an exercise in order to become more clairvoyant or whatever specifically, but to do magic, ritual, counseling, life experience, all that stuff together in order to become the best version of you and to clear out your own blockages. Because, like we said earlier, fear of seeing something is a huge thing for a lot of people. And that would definitely be a blockage to spiritual sight, being able to have a conversation with a spirit. Being grounded is really important if you're going to be working with beings that exist in a different plane of reality so that you don't get completely caught up in their stuff and forget that you are here and have a body and remember to eat and, take a bath and do whatever you need to do to take care of you. So it's a holistic kind of a thing. It's like learning, when I was learning how to dance, be a dance instructor when I was young, ballroom dancing, one of the things they talked about there and in other kinds of courses that I've taken since then is that your brain and your body have a limit to how much it can absorb at a certain period of time. Like in my massage classes, they limited our classrooms to 50-minute long sessions with 10-minute breaks so that the brain could absorb stuff. But with dancing and physical activity and learning a new skill, it's the same kind of thing. You have to let your body absorb it and your mind absorb it and let it sink in. So when sometimes people feel like they're losing contact with, losing their abilities, not having, the results that they're looking for, but what's really happening is that things are sinking down to a more cellular level and that kind of a um, letting go of the structure of learning. As you start from here, you end up there, and everything in between goes in a straight line. It's more like this, it's like you get a revelation, you go like, oh wow, I can't believe this is the best thing that ever happened to me, and then reality sinks in, and then what am I doing wrong? And then the energy moves back up again, and it just keeps on going like that. So yeah. All right. So Jacqueline says, thank you, that is very helpful. I struggle a lot with fear, lots of little animals making noise in my woods when I try to do any kind of concentration or meditation. Ophelia says, hello, my love. Which goddess god do you work with the most? What is your relationship like with Hecate? I don't actually work directly with Hecate most of the time. I have several goddesses that I work with. I've actually entered a god phase. So I have like more gods around than I had in the beginning. In the beginning, it was just the general goddess form, lunar goddess kind of thing, mother goddess, not a defined goddess. But Aurora has been one of my goddesses that, through my notes, I've noticed has made connections with me. I remember past lives where I worked with different goddesses. I worked with Isis, I worked with Aphrodite, and those kinds of things. That's one of the reasons why I connect with a lot of deities, I think, and for some reason they like me. Thor seems to think I'm just fantastic, and I have to be careful if I'm in a thunderstorm because I've actually been hit by lightning. And, so I'm kind of cautious, and I've had lightning hit right where I am numerous times. Right now I'm feeding the crows, and I know that that can be Hecate or the Morrigan or whatever, but I just sort of, yeah, I don't have a specific goddess I'm working with. My altar has got Artemis, Ishtar, um, Aphrodite. She was my first goddess when I was a kid. Actually, I guess Mary was my first goddess. I wasn't raised Catholic, but I did the rosary all the time, or actually not the rosary so much as the prayer to Mary, the Hail Mary, full of grace prayer. I knew it. I just always knew that one, and I don't know where I learned it or how. So, there are all different aspects of the same larger goddess and god energy. So we're all different when it comes to that. Do you think that being on medication messes up your psychic abilities in any way? I've heard many different answers. That probably depends upon you as an individual. Like, I can only take certain medications, so I can't answer that. There's a couple I can take for my body needs, one for cholesterol, one for my thyroid, and that doesn't seem to bother me. I can't take mind-altering drugs like marijuana. I have a bad reaction to the THC. I have yet to try the straight CBD cream because I'm nervous that there's going to be some THC in it. It's going to give me a bad reaction. Everyone's body is so different. So I don't know that there is really a single answer to that. Certainly when I was younger, LSD was one of the things that opened me up a lot, and then of course led me to having my complete and total destruction of my entire spirit being that I had to slowly put back together over the next 30 years. So not really a personally recommended method for opening oneself up. Some people, like Ian, is on some medication for panic and for anxiety, and they don't seem to interfere with his abilities at all. Some people find that it interferes with them. So again, there's no single answer. Everyone is different. That's the thing. It's kind of cool. Teresa says, how are elementals different than deity? Well, elementals are composed of a single element. Deity is like everything. I mean, deity is like the biggest version of us beyond ourselves kind of thing. So they're going to have all 5 elements and maybe one we don't even know of, as far as I know. But an elemental is composed of whatever its element is. So a water elemental, a fire elemental, an earth elemental, a air elemental. They're a single element being, and they're different. Like I met a sylph, which is an air elemental, and they're incredibly shy and really hard to get a handle on. They're very wispy. That's just sort of like air is hard to get a handle on. We had a fire sprite, which I'm not sure was an elemental or not, that Ian had stuck in his lamp. It might have been a fire fairy, so it's hard to tell. But, the water nymphs were the ones that taught me how to swim when I was a kid. They taught me the nature of water, and they're all about like their element itself. So they're very different from deities, which are like much larger forces and have bigger things that they're concerned with. So, Joey says, happy belated birthday. Thank you. May your coming year be full of health, happiness, love, and success. Well, I got the love already, so I'm good for that. And the happiness as well. But hey, health is always a good thing to have. Desideраtum says, hi there. Please tell us more about Aurora. I did research on Aurora sounds year ago. She sings. Aurora is the goddess of the dawn. I think the Roman word for it, but I connected more with the word because of the Aurora Borealis. And she is the mother of the winds, the 4 wind directions and things like that. And I don't know as much about her mythology. I just connect with her, and I have a poem I found that I liked a lot that was about the dawn that I try to say at least once in the morning to myself. And it sort of helps to set my energy for the day in a positive, light kind of thing. So, but I also connect her to the Aurora Borealis, even though it's not specifically that aurora. Yeah, it's a connection for sure. And hard to describe, like a lot of these things are. Joey says, a few weeks ago I asked a question on shadow people and you mentioned grounding them out. How do you do that? How do you ground out a shadow person? Okay, so I made a banishing wand, and I can absorb negative energy with my banishing wand and then take it out of the house and then put the end of the wand into the ground and deliver it to the earth, which grounds it out. I don't know exactly how to explain how I do that. Since we have 5 elements, earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, we have a certain amount of natural authority over things that aren't like us. I'm sure that, some people can abuse their authority and that kind of thing, but the idea is that if you make a clear statement about what is and isn't okay and where things need to be, then they have to do what you say, but you have to know that you can do that. Which actually leads me to one of the other questions that somebody sent in, which is, have I ever met a happy ghost? Seems all the ones I've described are earthbound and stuck because of some trauma associated with their passing, and also that most of them are stuck in a bad dream and don't have any degree of lucidity. So there's a big difference between a shadow person, which I have encountered a couple in human spirits and alone, and a ghost. And ghosts are, by definition, stuck because they're ghosts. If they're spirits, there's something different. If they're like a spirit from a family line, a relative that passed over and came back to be a guide and so forth, then they're not going to be stuck. But anything that is actually defined as a ghost is part of a human spirit that has been left behind and has not been able to continue on its journey the way it's supposed to, and it hasn't gone where it needs to go, which is why there's a lot of confusion around them as far as like how they feel about things and stuff. So Casey says, ever since I started taking Adderall, my psychic ability has increased. Adderall is for ADHD, is it? I think. So it could be that if it's helping to, realign your mental body, then that would be why that it's helping. And like I said, it's everything else depends. Jonathan says, I like luck spells. They kind of cover everything in life. Do you have any luck workings you like? Well, at the moment, the only luck kind of thing I'm working with is, okay, what's her name? Lakshmi. I was looking for a goddess of luck, and of course the one everyone knows about is Fortuna, the Greek goddess of luck, but she's incredibly fickle, so I decided that wasn't a very good fit. And Lakshmi, who's the consort to Vishnu, who's riding Garuda's back, and I already have Vishnu and Garuda on board, seemed like a much better fit for the idea of prosperity, luck, balanced luck, and that kind of thing. So I really don't do much else with it. I don't worry about my luck. Don't play the lottery very often. If I do, I haven't won, so, just go along. And luck is a funny thing. It's actually a good subject because people's definition of what's lucky may not actually be what's best. Like, my brother, when he was like 2, I think, he got out of his bedroom. He was an escape artist from way back, and he crawled downstairs while my mother was cleaning an oven with Easy Off oven cleaner. And she heard a cry and looked up from the oven and saw my brother sitting there with a gob of the Easy Off oven cleaner sprayed all over his mouth. He'd been eating it. Now, one would assume that this was bad luck, that he got out and he put a toxic lye in his mouth and it damaged his esophagus and his stomach lining and everything else. My mother had to take him to the hospital, and certainly she thought of it as bad luck. But then a few years later, and this I remember, a new neighbor moved in down the street, and I'm like 2 years older than my brother, about that, something like that. And we went to the neighbor's house to meet the little girl who was there, and she took us down into this basement, and I think she had all these boxes of things, and she brought out this, to me at the time, because I was pretty small, this big giant carpet bag, a purse, sort of like a needlepoint canvas kind of thing or whatever, and opened it up, and inside of it were these little bitty white balls, and they smelled funny. And so I thought, she offered them to us. She said that these are candy, and she offered them to us, and I didn't like how they smelled because I could smell them. They were methane mothballs, the pure kind that are very bad for you. And my brother just swallowed them whole. He swallowed about 20 or so of these mothballs. And then he bit into one, and he didn't like that because it burnt his mouth, and we went home to my mother. And my mother opened the door, and she smells the methane coming out of his mouth and takes him to the hospital. And they pump out his stomach, and they have, the doctor is walking around Ian is on his way out the door, so I'm distracted, so hold on a second. So the doctor's walking around the hospital muttering to himself, and he says, I can't understand why this kid isn't dead. And I've been looking and looking and looking, and the only thing that makes sense to me is when he ate that Easy Off oven cleaner. It damaged his esophagus and his stomach lining, and he didn't absorb any of them because these things are highly absorbable. So that's an example of something that if you were focused on luck being only positive things, you might end up not letting that happen. You know what I mean? So it's like it's a great subject because what is good and what is bad, it's going to depend upon the larger view of things, because something that seems to be really bad at the time can turn out to be the thing that saves your life later. So yeah, that's a that's my answer on that. So Annie Luhu says, any suggestions on selling a home? I've heard of inverting St. Anthony. I'm not familiar with St. Anthony and working with him, so you might know better than me. If it gives you a positive feel for presenting your house and stuff, then it's probably a good thing to do. That's how magic works. I mean, the whole point of it is to sort of align your energy in the direction that you're trying to go and remove as many blocks from you as possible to get to your desired end. And figuring out what the flow is, whether it's the right time to sell or whether you should wait to sell, or any of that other stuff is all about that, figuring that out. So follow your intuition. I'm trying to think if I've read anything about ways to do that. Oh yeah, I was going to show you guys my mask, so hold on a second. When I did my drawing down the moon video, I forgot about my moon mask. This is my lunar mask that I have. That is one of the things that I've used as a prop for helping me get in the right frame of mind and to feel separate from myself. So when I could become the goddess. And I thought it was the perfect mask because it's got that lunar shape in it and everything else. And it's the nice color, silver and blue, and it makes me think of the moon. So props are always good. So whatever props, it's like your particular feeling about it, that's what's going to work for you. So Tanya says, why are seasons focused around elements like winter is earth, etc.? Well, it's one of the association things. The idea, air. So air is like the sun rising, it's new, which is why it's associated with spring. Fire is complete in fullness and heat, which is why it's associated with summer. Water is like towards the evening, and it's flowing and malleable and changing, which is why it's associated with the fall. And the earth is still and solid and quiet, which is why it's associated with winter. So it's just associations. Doesn't mean that you only have those elements during those times. It's just a way of remembering what qualities the elements have and how they're associated around the wheel of the year, kind of thing. So Laura says, some people have suggested buying a statue of St. Joseph in your front yard. Well, if it works. Oops. Going up here. Pietra says there's a great video that explains exactly this type of luck you were talking about called the Nova effect. Ah. Okay. It's always good to know. Violet says, hello, Siofra. I'm mad at myself for being late. Unless I put it in my phone regular, I forget. Well, I'm glad you're here now, so that's a good thing. Midnight says, are sylphs surrounded by mist like in some descriptions? Now, the one that I met, the air sylph, well, they're so unsolid. I think the mist might be a way of being able to see them. They might move the mist around because they're air, maybe. I don't know. Amusing Thalia says, hi Siofra, mask is fabulous. You look lovely as always. Your hair down, your beautiful shawl. Did you make the shawl? No, I bought the shawl at Goodwill. I made a shawl and I'm not happy with the result, so I have to have a better pattern, and I will be making it again. One of those things. It's like I made it, there it is, and I don't wear it, so clearly I don't like it as much as I thought I would, so back to the drawing board. Thank goodness for replay. Yeah. So, on the thing about the ghosts and the spirits again, though, not all the ones that I have met are unaware of the fact that they're dead. I mean, there are some. There's a lot of different categories of spirit beings when it comes to that kind of thing. Like the Native American that I met in Central Oregon at my client's summer place or whatever, her family's summer place. He was what they call a conscious ghost. Intelligent haunt, that's what they like to call those, an intelligent haunt. He was very aware of his environment. He was also aware that he was dead, and he was aware that things were different from when he died. So he was a little bit confused, and he was trying to get help. So they can be completely aware of what's going on or not. It depends. Some of them aren't, some of them are. So yeah, there's a wide spectrum of that. And then I had an encounter with what is called, what do they call it? What's the term they use? It's a spirit that's stuck in a moment or replaying a moment and doesn't move and doesn't react. You can't communicate with it. And discovered that although that would be true under normal circumstances, I was able to shift my energy until I could get to a place where I could interact with the spirit and tell it what was going on and help it to get where it needed to go. So so there's that. So they're all different. She was just waiting to be rescued. That was why she was still there. She passed while she was from smoke inhalation. There was a fire in that location. And so she passed pretty quickly without realizing it while she was waiting for someone to come and get her out. Okay. Godwill store sounds brilliant. Goodwill. Yeah, we don't want to have a Godwill store. Midnight says, have you seen any angels working in nature independently or amongst the Fae? Well, according to Dorian, or Dora Van Gelder, she saw what she called a hurricane angel. Like it was like the larger forces or whatever had a guiding force, and then the nature spirits and guardian spirits for humans and stuff like that were working to try and minimize as much damage as possible on the physical plane, get their people out of the way if they could, if they would listen to what they had to say or not. So, the word angel is kind of a defined so differently in different cultures. To me, it's just an angel is a higher being that has more of a role in what's going on. So yeah, there are, I know, some like that. And then there's other different kinds of spirit beings as well. Primaria Rosinia says, hey, hon, I'm a trans beginner witch, and I've heard some people saying things like, if you have a uterus, you are a woman, and you can only work femininity. What do you think about that? What can I do? Well, I think that they're idiots for saying such a stupid thing. There's always been trans people in the world, and, Native American cultures had a place for people who were, felt like they were born in the wrong body. It's what you connect with that's important. And, as far as like the theology of Wicca and as a religion, their theology is basically monotheistic in that there's one goddess form that birthed the universe, and then the gods and the goddesses came out of that, and then everything else followed. So, we all have everything in us anyway. Whether people like to define things as black and white, this and that, where this is a feminine trait, this is a masculine trait, and the reality is, if you're going to evolve as a human being, you need to be able to embrace all of your parts, all of your traits as far as it goes. Having a uterus means you probably have hormones that you have to deal with that you may not want, but there's medication that can help with that. And yeah, ignore those people. Just this is about your own personal self-development. It's not about theirs. And when when we were at the classes with the Wiccan group north of us, the one that ended badly, but not for those reasons, one of her students was obviously trans, and he felt more connected with the goddess than he did with the god, and he did goddess invocations. He did what felt right for him, and so that is what you should be doing. And in our group, we had one woman who was very good at connecting with the God energy, and if Ian wasn't available, because we didn't have that many men in the group to do like the bringing down of the God energy, then she did that, and I did not have a problem with that. And it's just like connecting with the specific type of energy. And we've lived before, so or at least I know I have, which means we've been all kinds of other things. I mean, yeah. Anyway, that's my opinion. So, having to get approval from people, we were actually talking about that earlier today, and the fact that the way we have structured our lives and society has structured everything is there's a lot of times where we don't feel that we have any value unless we are told that we have value from another human, another person. And the fact that we believe on some level that our value has to stem from an external source and that just being born and who we are isn't enough is one of the things that I find sad about our entire culture, all of our cultures, when it comes to that. And that's why people feel alone and distraught and disconnected and wrong and everything else. It's like if we don't have a specific group of people that we mesh with well, then there's something wrong with us, or we're taught that there's something wrong with us right out of the gate, and we sort of take that on, we absorb that into ourselves, and it becomes part of our identity until we get to a place where we can weed it out and get rid of it. And it's a lot of work. It takes work to do that, to find those things in us where we have been told that there's something wrong when in fact there isn't. It's just who we are. So, I mean, I was glad when I connected with other forms of consciousness, because that acceptance that I got from trees and life and everything else far outweighed the negative impact I had from all the humans that were around in my life, and have more validity because there's a lot more life that isn't us than that is us. So it's one of those things. We all have things we have to try and figure out how to deal with and how to work through. It would be nice if we could start off better, not have that to start with, and then have to work through it all. But that's where we're at as of now, at any rate. Hopefully in the future things will be better. But yeah. So there's that. The musing Thalia says, from what I understand, you turn St. Joseph upside down and bury him next to the realtor sign, telling him you'll turn him right side up when the house sells and put him in a place of honor in your new house. He doesn't like it. So it said your house sells quicker. Well, torture a saint. That's perfect. I love it. Midnight says, I love Dora's book. I was wondering if you could confirm the things she had written in there. I've definitely seen some of it. There's no doubt about it. Carla says, hey, Siofra, loving your hair. I have a question. I used to get downloads and premonitions and visions like I was the one going through the situation, but then it would happen to someone else. After a kid died, they kind of stopped. Thoughts on that? Well, you could have tried to block them at that point, because that would be very traumatic. And I know when I was going through premonitions and things like that, I wasn't very, especially as a teenager, I wasn't very fond of it. I didn't like it at all. And I've had some dream experiences where I've witnessed a violent act that happened somewhere, not where I was, but I witnessed the whole thing, and it's very frustrating because there was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't like call up the cops and say, "Hey, somebody in the country has had this terrible thing happen to them. Can you look into it?" Yeah, so it doesn't work well. So it can be very frustrating to know things that you can't change. But I did learn that there's a difference between something that's going to happen no matter what you do and a warning that you can take steps to prevent. And so I try to be open to the warnings about things I can prevent rather than the things that I can't, because what's the point of knowing them? That doesn't work. So the blocks that we put on ourselves are going to be the ones that we have to deal with, and maybe your subconscious decided it was time for you to have a break from knowing things you couldn't do anything to change, I would guess. Tanya says, "Thank you for supporting the trans community and very much respect your opinion. It is one's individual's journey, not about pleasing others. Amen, sister." Well, you're welcome. I just try to be a genuine individual and not be all judgy about stuff that's just silly. Eden says, "Hi, Siofra. I'm Ben, another trans witch, and just wanted to say I appreciate you and your words and love your videos very much." Well, awesome. I think that's great. Carla says, "Did I lose my gift? Sending blessings." I think I answered that question before you asked it. I think it's just blocked. So, it may come back in a different form. And, there's things like when you're born a naturally gifted psychic, and you start on this path of magic to, hone your skills and because it seems like the thing you're meant to do. In the beginning, when you start to learn all this stuff and you start doing exercises to help balance yourself, it can seem like your gifts are shrinking. And that's because they've been overblown, like out of control. And a gift that you can't control isn't really, in my opinion, much of a gift. And so even if the ability is dampened, that doesn't mean that the gift is gone. It means that you are working on other parts of yourself and aspects of you and shoring them up and working with them so that when you get back to having that happen, you'll be better balanced, emotionally able to take, take care of yourself and to handle whatever it might be and be able to turn it off if you need to. And that's an important thing to be able to do. I have some days when I'm in Goodwill, for example, when I can't touch objects. When it happens, I know, okay, I'm in trouble. I can't touch anything today because every time I touch something, I get a flash of whoever had it last and energy comes off of it. Most of the time that doesn't happen to me, but on occasion it does. And so when after the first object I touch like that, I keep my hands in my pockets and it's just like, I'm going to look, I'm just going to look, I'm not going to touch unless I see something that I know is supposed to be mine and I'm supposed to rescue it, and then I'll pick it up and take it home. But, you have to take care of yourself. We're not here to be tortured, I don't think, by everything that happens to us and by knowing too much too soon. And it's not a bad thing to let other parts of your personality and your energetic body and everything else that you have with you to develop. Like people talk a lot about me being so grounded, and it's a funny thing. I never was. I was not born grounded. I was airy and watery to the extreme. I knew stuff I shouldn't know. I saw stuff people didn't see, and it was just who I was. I had no ability to block all that information and no way to put it into context because I was a child. And working on being grounded has been, in my opinion, my biggest challenge and also my biggest success. Because now I have more control over what happens to me. When I'm willing to do something, if I don't feel like I'm capable, I can say no. I don't have to do everything that comes across my table or across my path. It's like I'm in control of the shape of my life and the direction that it goes, and not being bandied about by the wind of whatever in my head, just kind of thing. So it's not a bad thing. Rosa says, thank you so much for all the support. I feel a little bit better now. Good. Welcome, Ben. Desidratum says, odd personal story about shadow people. During a retreat, I was camping outside of a meditation center with an old friend who is a Buddhist monk. I woke up in the astral plane and saw a shadow guy. Let me skip. Walking toward us. A rainbow that originated above my monk friend shot down on the shadow guy, and it ran away in a streak of light. Oh, that sounds awesome. And I think I figured out, so far we haven't had any today, so it hasn't been an issue. But I did look a few things up, and if you guys, see somebody who's doing something they're not supposed to, you can block them, feel free. And like you did last time, because that was inappropriate, to say the least. Carla says, the kid died on my shift, even though I tried everything, but I knew 6 months prior he would die. He was in his final stage in life, unfortunately. Yeah, we did one of my friends asked us to do a healing ceremony for her mother when she had cancer. And, we did our best. We put our all into it and, sent her healing energy. Hey. And when we did it, I knew that it wasn't going to work. Like, there was nothing that was going to stop her from dying. But she went into remission. So I thought I was wrong, and I thought, this is great. But her remission allowed my friend to spend time with her mom before she passed. And so that in itself was a huge gift, that time. So sometimes there's nothing you can do. That is the way that it is. It's like sometimes there's things we can do and sometimes there isn't. So accepting reality is sometimes difficult. Violet says, you are a very cool, genuine soul who is not judgy, all right? Your 70 years made you so loving, grounded, and wise. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I try, at any rate. And Carla says, thank you so much. I really appreciate your wisdom. Marinda says, hello. Hello, Marinda. And Carla says, I remember my dreams for years now. I've dreamed about these two boys, and I think they were my guides or my mentors, but they stopped appearing. Do you think there's a reason for that? Kind of missed them. Well, like I said before, it could just be a different phase of what you're going through, and they may be back. So try not to worry about it and work on yourself. Midnight says, I was wondering how long on average it takes to prepare for a spirit evocation, mentally, physically, spiritually. Depends on what kind it is. If you're talking about the ceremonialist style that we did, we had to make the objects. We had to I had to get the linen fabric and sew it together to make it big enough. Ian had to draw the circle and put the symbols in and get that on. We had to research the being that we wanted. We had to make its spirit seal and do the preparations for that with virgin parchment and unused ink for any other reason kind of thing and whatnot, and then charge it up. And yeah, there's a lot of preparation for that kind. If you're talking about like drawing down the moon, which is more of an invocation than an evocation, then it's different. So yeah, got to read the book and you'll see all the stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. So Jonathan says, I have a big crystal I'm going to charge to protect the whole property from negative energies. I want to program it to draw energy from the earth, but I can't find information on doing that. Any tips? Well, if you're going to put it on the ground, that makes it easy, and have like a visualize a root coming out of the crystal down into the earth, and connect it to the earth first. And crystals are fairly connected to the earth to start with, and then reverse the energy flow and visualize the energy coming up from the root into the crystal when you start the charging, and then keep that up. Every month, I'd say, for a while at least, to do it again, to reiterate, as it were, what you want it to do. You're sort of programming the energy flow for the crystal, and visualizing it going out, making a shield of protection around where you want it to be. And then, if you're really still not sure that it's working, you can take smaller versions of the same kind of crystal and connect it to the crystal that you're using, and then take those and bury them in the four corners on, out of, at the edge of where you want to have the protection. And then connect them all together and visualize them forming a shield of protection. That's what I would do anyway. And we've actually thought of doing that kind of thing here. We were going to do like 4 different kinds of crystals depending on the direction that it was, and people were trying to gather together like large examples of it. I have some really big obsidian pieces that I picked up on a mountain that was covered with obsidian. We have one boulder that's probably about that big in our front yard. And then going out and burying them in different points around town. So that's a thought. So Carla says, I've been working on sigils. Is it okay if I tattoo one of them? If so, which one should be recommended? Protection? Well, anything you put on your body as a tattoo is potentially permanent, so protection seems like a good one. I don't have tattoos. I like to carry things with me, and then if I just change my mind, I can put them down, and then I'm not stuck with them on me. So, but that's going to be entirely up to you. Jonathan, Violet says, I'm going to watch drawing down the moon you made, but please share, why does someone draw the moon down? Do you make a talisman with it or an intention? You're going to need to watch the video. It's not what you think. So Jonathan says, brilliant, crystal roots. Good. Glad that was a good one. Desideradum says, I love hearing your stories about paranormal investigations. I love watching videos about them also from others, even though I have zero interest in experiencing it directly. Anything happened lately? We have a new visitor. And it was very interesting. It smelled like vanilla. I mean, it was the best vanilla smell ever. I'm sitting in the living room just hanging out, and all of a sudden, this beginning of a waft of the vanilla scent, and I go like, wow, that's kind of a neat smell. And then it gets stronger and stronger and stronger until I have to say something. And I'm like, my goodness, there's something here that smells so much like vanilla, and there's nothing, no food substances of any kind, and it's definitely no vanilla around my chair. And then Ian smelled it too. Apparently it went through the air and he got to smell it as well. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't there physically. It sure smelled like it was, but there was no source for it. So that was pretty cool. I liked that. But that's not a ghost. That's something else. Okay, Primaria says, how do I know that a deity is my guide? Father, mother, sorry, I only know the right term in Portuguese. I've been attracted to Lilith lately. I feel like she is calling me, and I fit with her. Like she has a chaotic and sexual energy that I've always felt. I identify with her, and it feels right, but I'm not sure if I'm actually a Lilith's son. Well, it depends on your pantheon that you're working with. I mean, it's a very personal experience, and it can change. You can be connected to a deity for a while to teach you something, and then grow away from that deity and then get connected to another one. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a permanent thing. And a deity is not the same as a spirit guide. It's definitely more of a visceral personality, not as distant in that sense. So you're the only one who can decide if it's right for you or not. And you can always say no. Just because a deity offers doesn't mean that you have to accept. You have to remember that you've got the choice ultimately to make, to decide whether this is going to be the right fit for you. And sort of think about that before you make your decision. Desideratum says, a few stories I've heard about hauntings sounded very much like trapped elementals. How do you release them? And how do you do it so they don't come after you? Well, if it's a trapped elemental, okay, so I have one that had with a... Alright, when I was in Texas, the video that I did that's called Opening a Portal Between the Worlds has got this in that video. And one of the things that happened on the property in Texas that I was there to clear was that a woman who was a energy healer, she did a visualization of a fire around her every time she meditated, to the point where a sort of simulacrum, like a duplicate of her, was created out of just the fire element. So there was an elemental in that sense that was wreaking havoc on the property, causing issues, health issues for people. There was lots of other things going on too, but that one was one of the specific things I was there to address. And after I helped the natives to cross over to the other side and opened up that portal, then I could see the fire elemental in the circle. And what I did was I took the elemental and kind of turned it down into the earth and to join the fires at the center of the planet, and it just sort of melted into the ground and then was dissipated. It was reabsorbed by its element. So if you have an elemental that's wreaking havoc, the thing to do is to join it with a larger form of itself so that it becomes just one part of it. So like a water elemental, you could put into a lake or the ocean, or even into the ground where they have, primitive rivers and lakes and things that you don't know are there, but are there, that kind of thing. So you think about what the element is and how it can be absorbed into something that will take away that individuality, because it's that individuality thing that causes the trouble. So that's what I've got on that. Okay. I've missed a couple here apparently. Marinda says, so about 3 weeks ago I was spaced out and noticed I was tracing the number 5 over and over with my finger. I've been asking the universe what I should do with my life for months now. And last night my friend told me about numerology and that everyone had specific numbers for certain things. She pulled up my number and it turns out my life path number is 5. The universe literally answered my calls, but I had no idea. Yeah, well, that happens. So Amy says, hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Yeah, we're just about ready to stop. So she says, Amy says, any plans for the upcoming wolf moon? Well, I'm going to post the Amethyst crystal video up under our community page to remind people so that they want to participate in that they can. But that's pretty much what I'm doing for every moon at this point. So I don't have anything else specifically planned at the moment that I know of. Violet says, why would a deity lift its head for you if it wasn't meant for you? Just curious. I was rather honored by Medusa not long ago. I found it so odd, but very real. Serpent wisdom, I imagine. Well, I mean, Thor likes me. He thinks I'm just really tasty, and I have kind of a cautious relationship with him. So, you have free will. That's sort of the whole point of being a human, right? Is to decide for yourself. Writer says, serpent wisdom, very misunderstood form of wisdom, but very worth it. And Carla says, now with the pandemic, there are crystals that I want to buy, but I'm afraid to order them online. I don't blame you. I have some of those fears myself. But, at some point, hopefully this will be over and we can go play with them in person again and get the right feel for them. So it looks like it's been our hour and 30 minutes at this point. And Writer says, Thor is pretty awesome. I can see why he likes you. Yeah, I'll have to tell you guys about being hit by lightning at some point. It was certainly different. But anyway, this has been awesome. Hopefully I have managed to answer most of the questions that came in and answer a bunch more. And I'm glad that we had an opportunity to chat about things. So I like this format and I enjoy my conversations with you guys a lot. And today we had no trolls. Yay! So I guess I'll see you guys next week and have a wonderful time. Yes, you're welcome. And if you have any specific things you want to talk about, send me an email and we'll do it on a live show or I'll do a video about it. So, bye guys. Blessed be. You're welcome.